Hey, it's Andy here, and today we're gonna have a closer look at the Sensory Percussion Sound System. The Sensory Percussion Sound System has been around for a while, and it is still powered by Sunhouse, the company that came up with it in the first place. But now, this is the second generation, and now it's part of the Evans product family. And if you purchase this set, it comes with 3 sensors, the portal, an audio interface, especially built for this purpose, and then you have those little pickup elements that come with it. Another thing that comes with the set is a pair of drumsticks and also an EMAT adapter so that you can place the sensors also on a bass drum with an EMAT head on. This has been quite a difficulty with other triggers, but this works here, and that's important, those are not triggers as you know them. And the easiest way to show you what I mean by that is if we just place this one on the snare and I show you the process of getting it to work. So first of all, we need to get one of those pickup elements and place it on the snare. I've also prepared the kick drum and the floor tom before, and there's mesh heads on all 3 drums, Evans DB1s to be precise. So now you take this pickup element, place it like this, next to the rim, press it down. It has an adhesive side, so it's gonna stick to the drum head. Get rid of this whole thing here, and you're done. Now take the sensor, place it right above the pickup element, just like this. And you're ready to go. Only thing missing is the cable. The cables are actually just simple TRS mini jack cables, so just plug them in, get the cable in this little cable clip on the side here, connect it to the portal, and you're ready to go. Now, as you can see, the portal gives you space for up to 7 sensors. So this kit comes with 3, but you could, if you have a bigger kit, if you want to have more drums, you can buy additional sensors and do whatever you want with those. There are also 2 XLR or large jack inputs for if you want to plug in a microphone, or if you have sensors from the first generation, they also work with the portal here. And then just as a regular audio interface, you got all the settings you need. So you could also use this interface, the portal, to record guitar, vocals, whatever with it. But let's stick to the Sensory Percussion Sound System and just use it for the 3 first inputs for snare, floor tom, and kick drum. Now let's jump straight into the software. And this is also where the magic happens, and this is also what sets the Sensory Percussion Sound System apart from regular trigger modules or something, because this is not a triggering module, it's just an interface, and all the magic happens in here. And the Sensory Percussion software gives you tons and tons and tons of different options to use those sensors for your music, for your playing, for whatever you want to do with those. So how do we get the snare to work in here? You can see there's the floor toms already here, the kick drum is already here, so let's just add another sensor. In this case, sensor 1 is the input, snare, size 14. This is an AQ2 snare. Very important, what kind of head. So you could use those sensors with mesh heads, but also with regular drum heads if you want to use those in a hybrid setting. But let me get to that later on. So everything set, create, and here we go. Just as you see, it already works. Now the most crucial part of setting up the whole thing is the training. And this is also where the magic really happens. Because what we do now is, let's start with level 1. Now we divide the drum into different zones. So you not only have the chance to trigger the head and the rim, but you can divide the drum into up to 10 zones. And that's pretty ridiculous and opens up tons of new ways to use it. So first the center. Next zone is the edge, so play the drum close to the edge. Next, the rim, played with the shoulder. So there you have it. Just this quickly and this easy, you've divided the snare into 4 zones. Now, let me tell you, this training part is one of the most important things when you're using the Sensory Percussion Sound System. Because the better you're training, the more accurate the sensors will work and the better you can use them to do whatever you want. So the better you get the center of the drum divided from the edge, the better you get the rim played with the shoulder of the stick divided from the rim played by the tip, the better and the more accurate the software can work, the sensors can work, and the more you're in control of what happens. So take the time, do it. If you're feeling like, it's not really doing what I want, then go through the process again. Do a certain zone again that you think does not work for me. Just training is everything. Now if we head to level 2, let me just go quickly through it. You'll have 7 zones. 1 drum, 7 zones. Those are so many options that you can play now. Let me just quickly go through it. We're not gonna talk about every zone. Now to give you an idea of what it does, let me just pick one of the preset kits here that are already installed when you open the software for the first time. And now you can hear that the different parts of the drum have different sounds put on those. And this, just from the start, gives you so much to choose from, and also it really triggers your creativity because there are sounds thrown at you. And not only are there different sounds for the different zones, but the sounds, for example, also change whether you play louder or you move in and out. How this works, I'm going to show you in a second, but let's get this out of the way and check out what sounds we have on bass drum and tom as well. To be honest, a little random, but I just picked one of the kits and yeah, this was what happened. Next one. So I'd prefer this kit over the one before, but as you can see, without having to go into detail with the software, it just gives you fun stuff to play around with. Now, of course, there's also, if you just go to Sounds, you have different sessions already installed. You could also go to Acoustic Drums, load the session, and you have quite a few acoustic kits you could choose from. But of course, using it as an electronic drum kit would just not be enough, because there are so many more options you have to choose from with those sensors that you would just lose so much potential of the whole thing if you just put drum sounds on it. But this was just to show you that this would also work. So if you're looking for, I don't know, you want to use those for practice purposes or something, you could also do so. You don't need another set of triggers or something. You can do so, but there is so much more to it. Now you've seen me divide the snare, you've heard the toms and the tom and the kick drum. Kick drum, for example, you can divide with a closed kick, with playing into the head, open kick, out of the head, then playing the rim with your tip, playing the shell, playing even the hardware is one zone you can choose. So imagine what you can come up with once you really dive deep into the whole thing. Now, to give you an idea of what you could come up with, I have created a very own kit myself, using also our own samples. And you need some time to get into the software to understand how it works, but if you're used to working with digital audio workstations, a lot of the things you could work on are pretty much the same. They just live in a different way, in a different surrounding. But let me show you what I mean. So if you go to the edit screen, I've created a Steve Jordan kit because I've used Steve Jordan samples from our ArtOfDrumming sample pack. And now you have the different drums in the front here. And this is just basic. So if you take time and work your way around this whole thing, you can come up with so much more. You could use more effects, you could use more different modules, you could use more sounds, and so on and so on. But this is just to give you a very short introduction of some very basic things you can do. So for example, here's the snare, and I've created a hit controller. It's called hit controller. It is here in our controller settings. Just drag and drop this one in here, hit controller. And I've set velocity. You could also set timbre and speed. And what does it do? I have created 3 zones with 3 different sounds. And by choosing velocity, it simply changes the sound the harder I hit the snare. So now you can also decide how wide you want to be, how wide you want the velocity range to be for the individual sounds, and you're good to go. Now, next step was, in our sample pack we have 3 samples per velocity. So there are 3 soft samples. And to make it a little more organic, I decided to get in all 3 samples and just put this thing on random. So what it does is, whenever I hit the snare, it switches between the 3 samples randomly. So You get a more organic feel of you playing the snare, not always hitting the same way. And this is so easy to create. So it's usually only grabbing the tools from the menu in here and you create whatever you want to do with it. Now for the tom, I decided to use tom sounds for the tom head, for the center and the edge, and have some chords on the rim. Same with the kick drum. Kick drum, kick drum, and some notes for the rim. And so now I have a pretty unique setup that I can just play around with. Now, of course, this is still very basic. And additional to the stuff you've just seen, you can also always bring in effects. So here from your effects section, you have different things to choose from. Reverb, filters, more EQs, tube amps, chorus, blah, 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 blah. And now you can also play around with the settings on those effects and let zones trigger things of those. And if you switch back to the play menu, you also have, let's go back to one of the pre-installed kits, you have macros. So for example, if many of your different sounds have reverb on them, you'll have a reverb macro down here that lets you just adjust the reverb for the whole kit with just one knob that's easy to reach. And now if you think about using a MIDI controller, for example, to work on those things, then it's endless. And what I want to tell you with this is, this thing is not just I trigger your drums. It's a totally different instrument that opens up so many more sound options, so many more paths that you can go as a musician. So for example, you could use it in a setting like this, but you could also use it in a studio setting to come up with, I don't know, cinematic music where you just, instead of playing notes, you trigger notes or chords by the velocity you play. So this is your keyboard, kind of. Know what I mean? Now to give you another option of how you could use the sensors on a drum kit, here's a little playing sequence of myself playing the AQ2 snare with the sensor on an acoustic kit, so in hybrid setting. So okay, this was one version to use the Sensory Percussion kit with an acoustic kit that you just place another drum, another pad next to the kit. But you could also use it, for example, on the kick drum. So with the set you've just seen, I've also placed one sensor for the kick drum. And one thing you need to do if you want to use it with an EMAT is click in the EMAT adapter, then just slide it onto the bass drum, and you're good to go. And now you have the chance to, for example, use the rim, use the hardware as just new zones. So you can incorporate parts of the drum kit that you would have not used before. For example, if you play with a pop act and you need another electronic kick drum, just put it in the shell and you don't need a second trigger kick drum pedal. Just play the shell of the drum and you're good to go. Or in a solo context, you could place notes around your kit and play it like a keyboard. So if you have individual notes on individual parts of your kit, you're very free in what you want to do with it. And now to end this whole thing, this is just a very short overview and just some of the creative things that came into my mind when I sat down with the Sensory Percussion Sound System for the first time, had a few days to play around with it, to check out some different settings. But to get really into it, it will take some time. So I highly encourage you to check out Sunhouse's YouTube channel, where they have drumming greats like Marcus Gilmore, Antonio Sanchez, and many, many more demonstrating their way of using the Sensory Percussion Sound System. Now, in most cases, it's the first version, but the way it works and the stuff you can do with it is pretty much similar, and the options just grew with the second generation. Now, the sample library that comes with the module, that comes with the software, is pretty vast by itself, but you also have the chance to load in all your own samples, like I've shown you with our Steve Jordan sample pack sounds. So whether you want to sample your favorite synthesizer you have at home, whether you want to use acoustic drum sounds that you've recorded yourself, it's all possible. And then you have a lot of options to tweak the sound in the software. You can change the pitch, you can work with effects, you could use envelope filters to just modify the sound. And to really get into it, you need to sit down with the module, with the sensors, with some drums, and just check around. Another cool thing is that you can also work on the session, work on your kits, work on your sounds without the portal or any drums being around. So just by clicking the zones you want to work on, and for example, if you're on a train ride, if you're on a plane, you can play around with all the things, and then you get down to your drums and you just start playing, and you just get carried away with all the options you have. Now, there's a lot more I could talk about, but let's keep the video this short or this long. You really have to discover all the options yourself and make this your own instrument. Now, what do you think? Is this something revolutionary that will change the way people look at drums? Is this something you're interested in, or is it just too much for you? I'm really looking forward to reading your comments. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you in one of the next videos.